Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna. Continuing with our stories of the 252 Vaishnava disciples of Sri Gosaiji. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Continuing with Varta 223. Bhav Prakash. The moral of this story is Sri Thakurji depends on the devotee's loving devotion. It does not matter how many rules of behaviour, rituals, seva and remembrance a devotee makes. Sri Thakurji will not respond to anything but love. Time is also not an influential factor in the path of grace either. There is no such rule that doing seva for a specific amount of time will bring the desired result of his experience. The only influential rule in the path of grace is the Lord's grace-filled blessing. See, if he so graces you, you will see him in a single second. Part 1 continued. The Vaishnava fell at the old lady's feet and said, I am sorry, I did not recognize your true form. I have shown you anger and said many unjust things to you. Please now bless me so that Sri Thakurji will grace me. I have spent many lifetimes wasting my time. You are an accomplished Vaishnava and I should remain silent. The old lady replied, O Vaishnava, please do not say this. You have greatly graced me in that if you had not argued with me, I would not have had the chances to meet with Sri Gosaiji, nor Sri Gokul, nor see Sri Gokul, nor sipped Sri Yamunaji's waters. Whatever Sri Gosaiji or Sri Thakurji do to a Vaishnava, it is always for their own good, and the embodied soul gets liberated thereby. Bhav Prakash. This story shows us that the Lord likes Vaishnavas to argue because it leads to the granting of grace. Because of this argument, the old lady got to have the holy site of Vraj, Sri Yamunaji, Sri Gosaiji and Sri Govardhanaji. If Sri Thakurji had solved the argument then and there, she would have not have come there. This argument between Vaishnavas led to the granting of the Lord's grace. Part 1 continued. The old lady spoke, O Vaishnava, if you so wish, you can ask for another Sri Thakurji and you can serve the Lord wherever you wish. But if you would be happy to do so, you can make seva together with me. Our two Sri Thakurjis will reign together. I am very happy with you. Why? Because you argued over Sri Thakurji, and this is only because you have affection for him. He occupies your mind and heart. Meeting such a Vaishnava even for a second is rare. The Vaishnava replied, I shall indeed stay with you. Through your association, Sri Thakurji will bless me. You are most gracious. I had argued with you so much, but still you had not had bad thoughts towards me. I had heard about great devotees, but now I have seen one. In this way, Sri Gosaiji solved their differences, and he gave the travelling box to the old lady. He advised you two should live together. The Vaishnava said, O Maharaj, I shall go anywhere just to stay with her. Sri Gosaiji then went to partake of Mahaprasad. When he had completed his meal, rinsed his mouth and eaten pan, he served the two of them with his prasadi leftovers. They partook of the prasad and prostrated before him. He gave them some of his prasadi pan bida. They stayed for some time in Gokul and then set off for Vraja. They returned to Gokul to take their leave of Sri Gosaiji, and then the two of them went back to their old lady's home, and they served their Sri Thakurjis together for as long as they lived. Bhav Prakash. This shows how great the association of accomplished Vaishnavas can be. He was very argumentative, but through her association, his mind was purified. Thus concludes Varta 223, the story of this old lady, daughter of a Gujarati Seth, who transformed a Sri Thakurji, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his tale. To her tale. Varta 224, the story of a businessman, his maidservant, and his son. Bhav Prakash. These are devotees of Rajasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, their names are Prabhalali, the Seth, Mahavidya, maidservant, and Asha, Seth's son. They all manifest from Nandi and are thus personifications of her divine loving sentiment. Part 1. Once Sri Gosaiji had come to Gujarat, he stayed at this businessman's house, who was already his disciple. Sri Gosaiji had previously granted the name and the Brahmasambandha initiations to the businessman, his wife, and their maidservant. He had also granted the businessman Seva, and the three of them happily took turns to serve the Lord. They served together for a long time. Then, through the Lord's wish, the businessman and his wife both left their bodies. They attained the Lord's lotus feet. The businessman had left instructions with his son to always address the maidservant respectfully as Maji, because she was greatly blessed by Sri Thakurji, and to always very diligently serve their Sri Thakurji with guidance from the maidservant. Thus the seva continued for many, many days. A group of Vaishnavas was to set out for the holy site of Srinathji. The son asked the maidservant, If you so allow, I should like to go with this group to tour around Brajdam. May I? She answered, O son, it is not in your destiny to go on Vrajayatra. He partook of prasad and then went to sit by a shop, whose owners were all Vaishnavas. He was not talking to anyone. The owner inquired, "Why are you so sad today, that you are not even talking to anyone? Please tell me." He replied, "There is a group travelling to have the holy sight of Srinathji. I asked Mataji if I might go, and she has refused. I am thinking that if I went, I would be able to have his sight and do some seva to him." The accountant said, "If you really wish to go, then you should go. I will help you to get ready. Why do you have to ask Mataji if you can go?" The accountant got everything ready for him to go. The son took many people with him and set off. They got halfway on the journey to Srinathji. There they encountered some of the king's men, and a fight ensued in which the king's side was victorious. He took the whole group as prisoners. Some days later he let all of them go except the businessman's son. The group travelled on and eventually arrived in Srinathji. They all had Srinathji's holy site there. They all made the tour around Vraj and enjoyed many celebrations as they had desired, and then took their leave of Sri Gosaiji from Srinathji. They then came back to where the son was imprisoned. The king released him. The son addressed all of the other Vaishnavas. "You have all made the tour of Vraj and returned here. I was left behind and I wish to go there now." The Vaishnavas replied, "Oh, where will you go now? You will need to find another group to go with. Please have this Sri Yamunaji water and this blessed Prasadi Tulsi necklace and come home with us." The businessman's son returned home. He said to Mataji, "I have completed the tour of Vraj. Please accept this Prasadi Yamuna water and this Prasadi Tulsi necklace." Mataji retorted, "You are lying. You did not tour Vraj. You got these Prasadi items from that group. You were imprisoned by the king. Why are you lying to me?" He felt humbled and fell at her feet. He piped up, "Oh, Mataji, I did not listen to what you told me, and I did not get to have the Lord's holy sight. You told me that I was not worthy. How did you know this? Please tell me in detail. You are an accomplished Vaishnava, so please tell me the plain truth. I shall do whatever you tell me from now on." Mataji replied, "In the Saraswat Kalpa, when Sri Krishna himself appeared on this earth, he danced the great circle dance, the Ras Leela. At that time I was a she-elephant, and I saw through my eyes all the Vraja devotees and all the birds and animals that were present there at that time, but I did not see you. Vrajayatra and Srinathji's holy sight are a privilege granted only to those who are Ras Leela related souls. Bhav Prakash. The land of Vraja is totally and entirely divine. Only those souls who are related to the original root of such Leela are able to have the holy sight of Vraj. Part 1 continued. She continued, "Now, listen to what I have to say. You must never tell a lie. If you lie, Sri Gosaiji will be unpleased with you. And now you should take to serving Vaishnavas. When they are pleased with you and bless you, then you will have to go on the Vrajayatra and have the holy sight of Srinathji. Never find fault in any one of them. If you do follow this route and try to go there in any other fashion, then you might well spend hundreds of thousands of rupees, but you will not have their holy sight. Serve the Vaishnavas." Bhav Prakash. This reveals the exalted position of services rendered to Vaishnavas, and it can lead to the privilege and attainment of the Vraja Leela and the blessings of Vraj. This is the greatness of such seva. Part 1 continued. The businessman's son then had a new mansion constructed and called Vaishnavas to reside there. He served them all very nicely. He gave them whatever they needed. He listened to their discussions about the Lord and always mentioned to them, "It will be with your blessings that I get to have the holy sight of Sri Govardhanaji and go on Vrajayatra. I have not yet had the good fortune to have seen these holy sights." He served the Vaishnavas like this for many days, until one day the Vaishnavas blessed him and said, "You should now go. You will have the holy sight of Srinathji and Sri Gosaiji. Get ready and happily go." He left, taking quite a few people with him. After some days he arrived in Srinathji and had Srinathji's holy sight when the temple opened. When Sri Gosaiji had completed the Lord's morning services, he descended from the mountain and sat in his bertak. The businessman's son came before him and prostrated, supplicating, "O Maharaj, please accept my donation." Sri Gosaiji told him to partake of prasad there. The next day the son asked Sri Gosaiji to grant him the Brahmasambandh initiation. Sri Gosaiji told him to fast the next day, which he did, and thereafter he bathed and came before Sri Gosaiji, who granted him the Brahmasambandh initiation in front of Srinathji. The son offered tulsi leaves at his lotus feet. After settling Srinathji down for a rest, Sri Gosaiji came down to his bertak. The son came and made his donation, and Sri Gosaiji left to partake of prasad. When he had finished, rinsed his mouth and eaten a pan bida, Sri Gosaiji fed the Vaishnavas with his prasadi leftovers. The son also partook. Then Sri Gosaiji went to Gokul, and the son accompanied him after making donations to Srinathji. There he had the holy sight of Sri Navaneet Priyaji and the 7 Swarupas. He made donations to them as well. After staying there for several days, the son took Sri Gosaji's permission to go on the Vraja tour. He spent many days touring Vraj and then returned to Gokul. He saw Sri Gosaji, who asked him, "Have you now completed your Vraja Yatra?" He said, "Yes, I have, with your blessings." He then took Sri Gosaji's permission to return to his homeland, and he said that he might leave the very next day. The next day, the son made donations to Sri Gosaji and said, "O Maharaj, we have one Sri Thakurji at home. Please give me permission to serve him." Sri Gosaji replied, "Yes. Now please do serve him happily." The son then took the tulsi neck beads and Sri Yamunaji water with him and arrived home. He gave these out to the Vaishnava group and fed them all with Mahaprasad. He took their blessings, put aside donations for Sri Gosaji and the 7 Swarupas, and then bathed into Seva. He and Maji spent their whole lives serving that Sri Thakurji, and he began to grant them his direct experience. He wanted them for whatever he asked them for whatever he wanted. The businessman's son was thus the recipient of great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. Through his association with his father's maidservant, he got to have the holy sight of Srinathji and Sri Gosaiji. He also completed the Vraja Yatra. All his spiritual wishes were fulfilled, and he was very happy and liberated. Bhav Prakash. A Vaishnava should always seek out the association of greatly accomplished Vaishnavas. Thus concludes Varta 224, the story of the businessman, his maidservant, and his son, who were the recipients of great grace and accomplished Vaishnavas, and there is no end to their tale. Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna, Aaj ke Anand ki Jai ho, Shri Gosaiji ki Jai ho, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.